Russia officially resumes nuclear testing by order of Vladimir Putin. Today, Putin ordered the Foreign Affairs and Defense Ministries, intelligence and civilian agencies to draft a proposal for the large-scale nuclear test preparations, the first in 35 years. He made this statement during an operational meeting with the permanent members of the Security Council at the Kremlin, where he was told that the entire West is against Russia and that Europe is preparing a blockade of Kaliningrad, and the United States has already deployed strategic missiles in Europe that are capable of reaching Moscow in 6 to 7 minutes. In addition, Russian Defense Minister Belousov also informed Putin about ongoing work in the United States to develop a new intercontinental ballistic missile, Sentinel, with a range of 13,000 kilometers. The strategic nuclear submarine Columbia and the heavy bomber B-21 Raider. Overall, at Putin's meeting, there was an atmosphere of Western conspiracy against Russia. But in the Kremlin, of course, they kept silent about the fact that several times in recent years the Russian Federation has announced and simulated preparations for resuming nuclear tests at the Polar test site on Novaya Zemlya. Moreover, let me remind you that Shoigu's plane even flew around this test site, and Russian media turned it into a real nuclear show. So to say that it was Donald Trump's statement that provoked the Russians is a lie. Although Putin's spokesperson, Peskov, has already rushed to say that Putin was not talking about starting nuclear tests, but only about checking the possibility of conducting them in the future. My name is Alexei Pichi, let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and write any detailed comment. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pichi News, using the link in the video description. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation or a paid sponsorship subscription. You can do this using the links and details in the description of this video. It says there, support the Alexei Pichi channel. Choose any format you prefer. I appreciate any support. Today, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered the Foreign Affairs and Defense Ministries, special services, and civilian agencies to draft a proposal on possible nuclear test preparations. He made this statement during an operational meeting with the permanent members of the Russian Security Council at the Kremlin. And now, the agencies have been instructed, quoting Putin, to gather additional information on this issue, analyze it within the Security Council, and submit coordinated proposals. A proposal on the possible start of work to prepare for nuclear weapons testing. Members of the Security Council cited as justification for such a step the order by United States President Donald Trump to the Pentagon to resume nuclear testing. But that's complete nonsense, and in this episode I'll explain how the Russians themselves have provoked the United States into making such a statement several times in recent years with their nuclear threats. Last week, the head of the White House said that the United States is planning to conduct some tests, without specifying whether he was referring to underground explosions that took place during the Cold War. Nevertheless, the director of the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation, Sergei Narishkin, said that Russian diplomats asked the Trump administration to clarify these statements made by the American president. In response, representatives of both the White House and the United States State Department avoided giving a substantive answer and assured that they would report the information to higher authorities and get in touch with the Russian side. If it is deemed necessary to provide clarification on the issues raised by the Russian diplomats, I repeat. After that, the head of the Russian Ministry of Defense, Andrei Belousov, put forward an initiative to immediately begin preparations for nuclear tests in the Arkhangelsk region. I consider it advisable to begin preparations for full-scale nuclear tests immediately. The readiness of forces and resources on the Novaya Zemlya archipelago makes it possible to carry out the tests in a short time. Let me explain here. This nuclear test site on Novaya Zemlya is the largest such facility in Russia, where hundreds of atomic explosions have been conducted since the 1950s. The last nuclear weapons tests there were carried out in October 1990, and since then, only subcritical experiments have been conducted at the test site, tests without a chain reaction that do not lead to an explosion. And this is exactly where the Russians started lying. Russia has repeatedly announced and simulated preparations to resume nuclear testing at the Novaya Zemlya polar test site in recent years. Let me also remind you of the footage showing Shoigu's plane flying around the test site, which Russian media turned into a spectacle. The supposed United States nuclear test preparations are actually a response to provocation by Russia. In addition, back in July of this year, there was information that Russia was actively expanding nuclear weapon bases from Kaliningrad to Kamchatka. During the years of the full-scale war against Ukraine, which was accompanied by repeated nuclear threats from Moscow towards Western countries, significant construction has been noted at least 5 nuclear bases, as evidenced by satellite images. And most importantly, it is crucial to remember that in just a couple of months, in February 2026, the last treaty between Russia and the United States limiting nuclear weapons will expire, and a new arms race in this area is inevitable. Satellite images taken in May and June of this year by the American company Planet Labs show large-scale construction at secret facilities connected to Russian nuclear forces. Weapons and roads and covered guard posts for inspecting arriving cargo. Tunnels, underground facility entrances, etc. 4 of these bases, including one in Belarus, are located in the west, meaning they can be used for strikes against European countries, plus one more near Alaska at the Pacific Fleet base. In other words, the very geography of the work at nuclear bases shows that in recent years, Russia has been targeting Europe and America, not the other way around. For example, Russia is repairing 2 bases, Osipovichi in Belarus and another near Kaliningrad. Why? In my opinion, that's a rhetorical question. Well, now for the most important part. Back in July, it was noticed by satellite that significant work was being carried out on an island in the northern archipelago of Novaya Zemlya. Yes, right there, where the Soviet nuclear weapons testing site is located. The images reveal at least 1 new tunnel and 4 buildings at the Novaya Zemlya base. The question is, why? And I emphasize this was before Donald Trump's statement. But Putin needed some kind of frightening justification for the Russians, and Belousov voiced it for him. Defense Minister Belousov at a Security Council operational meeting. He reported to Vladimir Putin about United States plans to deploy Dark Eagle missile systems in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region, with a range of up to 5,500 kilometers. The head of the Russian Ministry of Defense noted that in this case, the flight time from Germany to central Russia would be about 6 to 7 minutes. Belousov also told Putin about the United States' efforts to develop Belousov, a new intercontinental ballistic missile, the Sentinel, with a range of 13,000 kilometers, a Columbia-class strategic nuclear submarine, and the heavy bomber B-21 Raider. And Belousov says, listen, in light of all this, we simply have to pull out our nuclear club and once again, like crazy idiots, wave it around at the whole world. And